This is a series for financial advisors. We offer easy to implement marketing and practice management advice. This is the Stephen and Kevin Show.
Welcome back, everybody. Episode number 125 of the Stephen and Kevin Show. I'm Stephen Boswell, and I'm joined by a special guest today. Our guest, Louis Diamond, is CEO of Diamond Consultants. He's widely recognized for his work in helping financial advisors navigate independence, M&A, and building enterprise value. His firm, Diamond Consultants, has transitioned more than $250 billion in assets under management over the last decade. Louis personally spends his days advising some of the industry's most successful teams, giving him a front row view of what's driving advisor movement and growth. Louis, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me today.
You're welcome. And, as a bit of context, we were walking down memory lane earlier. Matt Oxley sat on the Diamond podcast in episode number 55 back in 2019. Now, that's episode number 55 of over 300 from what I gather, Louis.
That's correct. Yeah, it's crazy how long we've been doing this podcast now. I remember making fun of my mom, Mindy. She came up with the idea of doing a podcast. I was like, you don't even know what podcasts are. And she started off, I'm going to do 2 episodes, just talk about all the questions that advisors have about going independent. And it really morphed from there. So it's an amazing just bit of education we're able to put out. Obviously, it's influential to our business's reputation and to cultivate lead flow, et cetera. But we really just do it because we're passionate about adding some value into the advisor ecosystem.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Just the same from our perspective that Matt Oxley here, he's significantly older. Don't tell him I said significantly. He's older than Kevin Nichols and I, but he was the one pushing us. You got to be into digital marketing. You got to get into social media. We got to start a podcast. We got to start a video series. He didn't know the how-to, but he certainly knew that it was important. And listening back to that one.
The classic CEO, I'm going to come up with an idea and drop it on everyone for them to figure it out.
That's right. You got to love it. And, I spent a little bit of time listening back to that one earlier because I was curious. I think I had maybe listened in originally when it all happened, but I was curious on the topic of what are top advisors doing differently, what they would talk about. And I came away with, number one, Mindy Diamond, fantastic presenter, very articulate and a good listen. And Matt, always insightful, bundle of personality. And if any of you haven't listened to that one, it's still available on the Diamond Consultants website. Quick plug for you all, diamond-consultants.com. But all the podcast episodes are still there, easily searchable.
Thank you.
So let's jump into today. I think there's a lot of ground that we can cover. Both of our companies, you very specifically work with people in transition and help them navigate that. We do so from a marketing standpoint and are brought along for the ride merely for the fun stuff of how do we come up with a name and a logo and the marketing side of the equation. But we don't know as much about the nuts and bolts of how to make that transition successful from the business side of things. And I think our audience would benefit hearing from you, who's been through so many of these over the years. I'm curious, when you look at some of those who are thinking about making a move, going independent, what's the mindset that makes that successful? What should they be thinking?
Yeah. So in our business, we work with over 500 different firms. We're not on a retainer by anyone in particular, but really anyone and everyone across the industry is a potential landing spot for advisors we work with. So I just want to start off by saying, we don't only help people go independent. It's definitely what we're very well known for. And we've facilitated at least 3 of the largest independent breakaway deals ever. We did the Open Arc transition earlier this year and a number of other very influential moves. But specific to your question, it takes a special type of advisor to really have the intestinal fortitude, the entrepreneurial drive, and I'll say the long-term orientation to consider jumping off into the deep end from a wirehouse or from a private bank or from some sort of captive institution to go independent. So it's a mix of they have to really want to roll up their sleeves and build something and be a business owner and handle business owner type things, HR and payroll, in some cases compliance, managing vendors, dealing with real estate. So it takes that. And there's absolutely solutions these days to help with some of the heavy lifting, kind of help get advisors from A to B. They still have to kind of want to do that. The other side of it, like I said, is longer term orientation on the economic side. When advisors decide to go independent out of a wire, they're giving up unvested deferred compensation. They're kind of leaving the comfy confines of a big brand, like their office. The office is cleaned every day they come in. The business cards are on their desk, et cetera. But probably more importantly, they're actively ignoring or deciding not to take what could be a 4X of their trailing 12 recruiting deal, and instead saying, I'm betting on myself. I'm getting no money to move independent or something much smaller, but I'm doing this because I get a higher payout, but mainly I'm building real enterprise value that I own and control. And one day, 10, 15, 20 years from now, I can sell this thing for a lot more money than I could by taking an ordinary income recruiting deal, but also have more fun and more flexibility in the process.
You bet. And I think you spoke to it. It takes a lot of confidence to make that move, to say that my client relationships are really strong. They're going to follow me, that I have the ability to get out there and replenish every year, finding new clients outside of what the firm may provide me. And that, it's really easy, to your point, to sit in the office that your firm has provided with the business cards that have been printed and to say, why shouldn't we move here? Why did they do it this way? Yet when you're making those decisions on your own, I think they gain some appreciation that some of those things are a challenge. Finding new office space, we've been through it. It's a challenge. Hiring and firing, it's not all that pleasant. We went through some interviews today. It's not at the top of anybody's list, but it's all part of running a business.
Yeah. I mean, it's like advisors go independent because they want more autonomy and control, which sounds great. I haven't met an advisor who doesn't want more control. It's more so sometimes it's too much control. It's too much autonomy for individuals. I mean, we track advisor movement on an annual basis. We do a very thorough white paper that comes out usually sometime in the first quarter of the following year. And there's a reason why close to 50% of wirehouse advisors are going to move to another wirehouse. I mean, that number used to be 85, 90, probably 95% back in the day. But 50% is still a large number. And to me, it's like the wirehouses are still great companies. They're still a home for many of the industry's most successful advisors. It's just that now there's way more options than ever before. And for those that do want to go independent, it's no longer just, I'm going to custody with Schwab and I'm going to figure this all out on my own. I can hire Dynasty. I can go to Sanctuary. I can go to LPL. I can go to New Edge. Like there's all these different companies that advisors can plug into to try to make it easier. But you still have to have all the other raw materials that I mentioned before.
You bet. You've said the term enterprise value a few times. It makes, I think most of us intuitively know what you mean by that, but would you define that for us? What goes into enterprise value?
Yeah. So I kind of take a different, I have a different definition for enterprise value, more so just making it relevant to any advisor, whether they're a business owner, which is really enterprise value is technically the summation of future expected cash flows. That's like the textbook definition. I define it a little bit differently. I call it career enterprise value. And to me, it has 4 different components. It's what's the summation of future cash flows from the payout from working in the business. So my 50%, my 45% payout, my 70% payout over whatever period of time is component 1. Component 2 would be, what can I sell my business for? So if I retire at my firm and take the retiring advisor program, or if I sell the business to creative planning or to private equity or to Mariner, that's part of it. I also think a big part of it is, I call it the happiness quotient. You can't really put a monetary value on it, but for some people, they're maximizing the value of their career essentially by staying put, by keeping things easy breezy, by stability. And then the 4th factor would be ongoing. We'll say the ongoing growth of the business. So where can I grow the business the fastest? And if I can grow 5% faster here, that's obviously going to have a factor on the overall value that I can sell it for, and also on the value of my ongoing payout from working in the business.
You bet. And ultimately, where am I able to provide the best advice to my clients?
Yep.
And that's on a lot of people's brains as well. When you think about all of what goes into owning a business, we dial into the marketing side of things because that's how we're wired. That's the business that we run. What should people be thinking about when going independent, and what goes into marketing and independent practice?
Yeah. So, I mean, look, there's some very, very successful RIAs that don't even have a website. There's a firm, Jordan Park in California. It was this legendary Goldman advisor. They're like absolute killers. I think they manage like probably 10, 12, $15 billion. I don't even think they have a website. So it's not that it's like an absolute requirement to market yourself if you're independent. But I always think that if you don't want to lean into the marketing side of things, you're really not maximizing the full opportunity of what it means to be independent. So I think it starts with coming up with a brand, a company name that's not trademarked, and it's getting harder and harder because there's so many firms out there. It's coming up with a logo. It's coming up with a compelling website, and having a brand story, all the work that your firm can do. But I think increasingly too, it's about how do we grow the business, whether through some of these crazy AI type prospecting tools, or having a voice on social media, or starting a podcast, or having market commentary through a video, or writing a newsletter. Or it could even be more like targeted marketing toward a specific niche. Like on our podcast yesterday, I interviewed someone who they built a multi-billion-dollar business just marketing to 6 or 7 Fortune 500 company corporate executives. And they're just super, super specific in their messaging and who they target. So I think it's kind of everything all together. But yeah, like not a requirement to do marketing, but marketing leads to organic growth, and organic growth leads to the highest possible valuation for a business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can look at, some of the outliers being those ultra high net worth who have never really had a LinkedIn. They don't necessarily value a website. And
I'm kind of jealous,
I think for
right? That sounds, sounds so much easier. That just like
I would
my
love to
work's
walk
gonna
in.
speak for itself.
Absolutely. I would love to have that inflow of clients without having to push the marketing pedal. But I think for two reasons. When you're first going independent, you want to showcase some credibility that I didn't do this on a whim. I put a lot of thought into this. And I think sometimes a really robust website, a great logo and graphic design can show everybody that, hey, I'm legit. I didn't do this on a whim. And to your point about, ongoing growth, I'm sure you've seen it in your business and we've seen it in ours. And I think by contrast, both of our firms have been around a long time and experiment with a lot of digital marketing ourselves, a lot of thought leadership, and you see what tends to work for you and what doesn't. But I think long-term, we found it to be beneficial to get the word out about our brand and to attract people to us.
I agree. I mean, I always say too, like when someone's breaking away for the first time, you get one shot at a first impression. And the goal when you hand in your resignation letter and you start reaching out to clients and whatever legal strategy you pursue to do that, you basically have to project to these clients that we've been in business for 10 years, even though you've been in business for 3 minutes. And I think a big part of it these days is having a killer website that just is high end, kind of matches the personalities or their persona of the advisor and of the experience they're trying to create. Like, it's not cheap to build a good website. It's not easy. But I think maybe until all this crazy ChatGPT stuff like takes away the need for fancy websites, maybe I think it's definitively the first place where someone's going to create an impression of your new firm and really make a judgment call. Do they have their SHIT together? Is it worth it for me to move my clients' accounts from whatever firm I'm at to this new firm I've never heard of before?
And the marketing side to us is interesting that you can outsource pieces of that puzzle to people like us who can build great custom websites and run podcasts for you and all that sort of stuff, which is great. We can handle the graphics and the videography and all. What we can't really handle for people is being able to articulate what is unique and special and different about what they do. I mean, our part of our job is to tease that out of them. How do we get them to explain that story that's not so dependent upon the firm that they were once part of? How do we explain to people and not sound like everybody else out there that we give great service and we manage money in a holistic manner? I mean, it all tends to sound the same.
Yeah, I think it always kind of sounds the same to me. I mean, I've seen some really good examples where there's just something like really different about the story. Like it's so crisp, it is so different, and there's some expertise or niche that they're going after where it's like, yeah, these guys are world class at what they're doing. Most of it sounds the same, but honestly, like it's kind of okay if most of it sounds the same, because ultimately you're trying to retain your current clients. Most likely they're not shopping at that moment in time to other RIAs or other firms. And there's a reason why, like, I don't know, sometimes you got to play the hits, but I think you do have to go out of your way to tease out of yourself or work with a firm like yours to really get down to what makes you different than the person across the street. So as your marketing turns from being more retention, kind of defensive oriented to more playing offense, then it's very, I think, important to have something that you're saying or that you're presenting that's quite different from other people in the market.
Yeah, a lot of times we find it's just the advisor's personal story, their background, what got them into the business, some anecdotes of what's going on in their clients' lives right now that's the most scary for them to put out on social post or on camera or in a podcast, but it's the most entertaining to everybody out there.
Yeah.
That, nobody, when you're on video, nobody really cares about your 2 minutes worth of insights about, and I shouldn't say it that cavalierly, not as many people care about your 2 minutes of personal finance insights as they might, your story of growing up without money and how you learned to manage your own and blah, blah, blah. That kind of stuff draws people in.
Yep, I agree.
If you're given one piece of advice to an advisor who's doing okay, but wants to build something really exceptional in the coming 5 to 10 years, what would you tell them? Where would your focus be right now?
Well, it's a good question. I would say build the team. Like there's many really successful solo advisors who have one assistant. They're just grinding themselves. I think we're starting to see it pick up where having advisors with different specialties, whether it's different demographic characteristics, like female advisors, advisors of color, or from a certain, even just like socioeconomic upbringing, is very important to kind of connect with who the target client is. It's also very helpful from a capacity standpoint with so many new like lead generation platforms. There's like five like AI lead generation platforms I've heard of this week for advisors. So like to lean more into those, like you need capacity to service and to be out there. And I'm seeing firms too have different types of advisors, kind of splitting up or segmenting the traditional role of an advisor. Like I always thought was advisors had to sell, they had to service, they had to manage investments, they had to run their team. It's kind of more of like the wirehouse model. But I think the best firms in the industry these days, they segment what it means to be an advisor. They have more of like the biz dev focused advisor who's out there just cultivating relationships at the country club or working COIs or working the Schwab and Fidelity channels. And then they turn over the relationships to the more of like the relationship manager, the CFP, the individual who's super passionate about serving clients, adding value, answering questions, but breaks out in hives when they have to go and sell something. So I think kind of having these different personas of advisors is very helpful. And then also it creates capacity, which leads to growth. And if you ever go to sell the business, firms that have a next gen in place, have multiple tiers of advisors, tend to sell for more because there's more potential continuity, less risk to a buyer, and also gives the advisor a chance to actually walk away and not be tethered to the business.
Absolutely. And I think we've seen that trend for so long of going towards teams, yet you still run into people who are, I don't want to say anti-team, but you can tell they've been scarred by teaming in the past. They had a bad breakup with a partner before, or they had a junior advisor that ran off with some clients. Yeah. What do you say to those who've had a bad experience before, but we should probably rethink it?
Yeah, there's so many different types of teams. I mean, there's fake teams, no doubt, especially within the wirehouses where people just come together, they combine their names together, they have their brand, and they're just doing it to get a higher payout. Like you definitely have those. And like I would argue, like great if you're kind of gaming the system, but you're not really functioning like a team. And sometimes too, it's like you gotta crawl before you run. Like it's almost like start off a partnership, like start it with a prenup, like make it so that I still have my clients, you have your clients, but let's start small. Let's start collaborating on new prospects. Let's share these 5 relationships. Let's share support staff. Let's kind of show up at seminars together. And then you could kind of grow into something more enduring. But like I said, there's many very successful solo advisors. Some of it is just knowing your personality. Like one of the best parts of being an advisor is you really get to, for better or worse, you get to run your own race. So if you really just like, you want to be solo, you like grinding, you like all of the success is your success, then all the power to you. But all the data shows that teams perform at a higher level. They can provide better service, they grow faster, you can build different specialties, they sell for more money, et cetera.
And better for the client. Yeah, I think the clients benefit from having a variety of different skill sets and personality types all on board there. And, so much of that to us, that's probably our biggest coaching need right now. We used to have more, the 90% of people coming to us for coaching around client acquisition. And slowly but surely that's changed into wanting help functioning better as a team or growing the team. Because teams, on paper and through the data, we have the same perception that you do, that they do perform better. But having a high-performing team is not something you just stumble into. There needs to be structure and accountability and a lot of things that, you'd rather learn from a practice management consultant of sorts than you'd rather have to skin your own knee and figure out on your own that we probably should have had a policy for this, or we probably shouldn't have just had a handshake deal getting into this partnership, which we see all too often.
No doubt.
That's one of the benefits now of, over the years, you think back 20 years ago, there weren't as many coaches. There wasn't as much access to information through the internet, through YouTube, through now AI to give you best practices on how to run an organization like the one you're trying to run. I mean, now the information is out there. It's just a matter of having, the desire to find it and the willpower to implement it.
I was gonna say it's all about implementation. Then it's like the classic hire a management consulting firm, pay them a couple $1 million, get fancy slide decks, and then they leave. That's kind of the same thing where it's like it's easy to find information, but you really got to have the right attention to detail and follow through and guidance to implement all of the different philosophies and theories that are out there of how to be the best possible advisor.
Circling back for a minute, you mentioned earlier, and this was fascinating to me, that you all evaluate over 500 different firms as landing spots. That's a lot. What do you think separates some of those at the top, like the ones that you recommend most often or that you think advisors gravitate towards? What separates them? Great
question. There's a lot. And honestly, there's probably many others that we just haven't gotten around to evaluating. If I think about to the top 5 or 10 firms that we refer the most business to, it's not because they pay us the most amount of money or because even they pay the most amount of money to advisors. It's because they represent a type of firm that is appealing to advisors, whether we're a more nimble boutique type organization that gives you more autonomy, or even we're a wirehouse, we're Morgan Stanley, where we have scale, et cetera, but they're world-class in what they do. And they can very clearly articulate what makes them different, not in an adversarial way, like everyone else is terrible, we're the best, but there's 3 to 5 different things that make them stand out from everyone else. I also tend to prioritize firms that do kind of balance the right economic incentives, whether between the upfront capital they would provide to an advisor, ongoing payouts. They don't have a long history of changing payouts, et cetera, but also add a lot of value in return. And also firms that they're good recruiters. I mean, at the end of the day, it's hard for advisors to really judge a firm and the firm's culture, because really they're talking one, maybe 2 people within a firm, and they're making a snap judgment call about the firm based upon that person. I always tell advisors you got to kind of look beyond the front end salesperson, because you're probably not going to deal with them much after you're there. But at the end of the day, that's the emissary that the firm's chosen to represent the business. So firms that have a very good process, they drive the process, they answer questions, they follow through. Those I think are controllable things that any firm can do that helps them get more at-bats and land more planes.
It's interesting you mentioned that. Having 1 or 2 points of contact, you get a little bit of a flavor But, you and I both have spent tons of times at conferences over the years, and you walk into a conference and you get a real flavor of who that culture is within a matter of minutes of being there. You can get a sense of would this, and I think that's the value that you and your team brings is you've been to these things, you've met these people, you get a sense of who the culture is. And I can imagine when you get on the line with an advisor who's contemplating a change, you can out of the gate get a sense of culturally where they might fit in.
That's right. Yeah, we take everyone through. We have a 20-question assessment that we take every new advisor client through, and it's not like what's your trailing 12, like what's your growth rate. It's more that they're all qualitative questions, like what are the 3 things you would prioritize in a new firm? What's working for you at your current firm? How would you stack rank payout versus equity in a firm versus a deal? What are your 3 to 5 year growth plans? What are your thoughts on succession? So like we try to really get an understanding of what an advisor wants, what they don't want, et cetera. And then my job, I always say, is to always be doing due diligence on everyone in the industry so that an advisor doesn't have to.
Yeah, I love it. Hey, I'm curious, this kind of an aside, but how are you all using AI in your business? What does it do for Diamond Consultants?
Good question. Yeah, I'm a big I'm a big believer in it. Probably the biggest believer and user within our own firm. We use it, I would say, for brainstorming on like follow-up emails. Like we don't just grip it and rip it and send whatever AI does, but it's very helpful for synthesizing information for emails. I've used it at times to brainstorm like an outline for either a client meeting, for a podcast, et cetera. I've used it to summarize like white papers and various reports. I've used it to even synthesize like documents that we've put out, so I can make it more digestible for an advisor. Then I just started using it as well for some more like financial modeling type things. Like I'm not an investment banker, but knowing like the inputs and just having like a repeatable template that I can plug it into, it saved me an immense amount of time. And I think we're going to start testing it out like the prospecting side as well. So like, I don't know, I feel like we're not even using it that well compared to others.
No, I know that feeling. We're big advocates as well and excited about it, but I agree. We haven't tapped into the full potential, not even close yet. So it's exciting. Hey, I was in listening back to that episode with Mindy and Matt. She closed by asking him one question, and that question was, what does a day in the life of Matt Oxley look like? And I'm going to ask the same of you, Lewis. What does a day in your life look like?
That's a good question. I think we used to ask it all the time. We stopped asking it. I'm going to bring it back because I think that's such a cool question.
Yeah, it's great.
Day in the life. I have 2 very young kids, so that's always a big part of it. Waking up way earlier than I ever expected to, working out if I can, and then every day is different, which is why I love this job. A mix of probably 8 to 10 advisor meetings, doing stuff like this, recording a podcast, meeting new clients, different centers of influence, and then trying to end work at a reasonable time to spend time with my wife and kids, watch the Yankees if they're on, eat a good meal, and go to bed early.
That sounds like a good day. Yeah, I can relate. I say often, why does school start so early? I mean, to get kids up and out of the house with lunch and fully dressed and with a smile on their face is no easy task.
Right now, it's like, I don't think school starts early enough. My son woke up at like 5 a.m. today, and didn't have school or daycare till like 8. So I was like, man, I wish school was earlier.
Oh, man. Well, Lewis, thanks again for joining us. We love that vantage point. I think you bring a super complimentary message to what we offer, and I know the audience here values it. For those of you who haven't been there yet, check out diamond-consultants.com. I'm sure diamondconsultants.com probably sends you to a whole new universe of jewelry evaluators. But Diamond-Consultants is where you want to be. Great source of advice, great podcast, lots of written information as well. Thank you again for being part of the show today.
Thanks for having me.